If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description.
B Tier Part 2.
Shantae in the Pirate's Curse. Stripped of her genie powers, Shantae and Risky must join forces to break a deadly curse. Largely considered to be the best Shantae game in the franchise, and it's easy to see why. It picks up where the last game left off, showing Shantae without her genie powers, and this establishes some real stakes and rewards fans for their investment in the character and her world. But probably the biggest and best change is that the dance mechanic is gone. I know dancing is kinda Shantae's thing, but it also kills the flow of gameplay. Now that Shantae's abilities are just a button press away instead of some awkward minigame, gameplay is streamlined and fast-paced. When it comes to unique elements, Pirate's Curse is interesting in that it actually took away Shantae's unique element, her dancing, and the game was vastly improved because of it. And though the game really doesn't do anything new in the MV space, for the franchise, it is a little darker in tone and took its narrative and world a bit more seriously. And that brings me to my criticism. The game has no follow-through. Pirate's Curse brought a lot of intriguing questions and interesting leads, but then answers none of them and drops everything for the sequel. The direction the series was going with Pirate's Curse could have really made a nice, cohesive world with proper growth and stakes, but I guess the devs didn't want that for the franchise and rolled everything back. I personally think that was a terrible move because the series has felt stagnant ever since, with no real reason to get invested into its world. Shantae and the Seven Sirens. Shantae's tropical getaway goes from relaxation to vexation when all the island's half-genies get abducted. And with Risky Boots mucking about, Shantae has her hands full. After the abysmal half-genie hero, Seven Sirens returns to the franchise's roots by becoming a full-fledged Metroidvania again by replacing stage selection with an honest-to-God interconnected world. Not only that, but they got rid of the gameplay-stifling dancing mechanic for Shantae's traversal abilities. Now, Shantae can turn into an air-dashing newt and climb walls with the press of a button instead of dancing like a dork until the newt icon appears. This is going to sound silly, but the game's unique element is its dancing. Dancing is now relegated to something akin to special moves, and I think that's the way to go moving forward. Monster cards is a really cool idea as well. It isn't entirely novel, but it's still a lot of fun. Basically, it's a mix of Hollow Knight's charm system with Tealvania enemy drops. You collect cards randomly dropped by enemies, and once you collect enough, the enemy card becomes active and can be equipped for perks. This system is definitely something I want carried over in future installments. As for criticisms, it's tough to explain, but this game started out as a mobile game, and it looks like it started out as a mobile game. It's because the environments all look too similar, maybe? That brown ship vessel look is in every environment, and it makes the game look kinda cheap. The game also ends on a cliffhanger, which typically I'm fine with, but after they dropped everything that was laid down in Pirate's Curse when they essentially rebooted the franchise with Half-Genie Hero, let's just say my confidence in WayForward taking their series seriously is not unwavering. Worldless. Between realms of light and dark, a wandering soul battles abstract beings in an abstract and surreal landscape with a single instinctive goal to dominate her oppressing soul. But what would happen if she defied her instincts and worked with this soul instead? Worldless is such a unique Metroidvania, so much so that talking about it generally is tough, so I'm just going to go right into its unique elements. First off, its gameplay is separated into two distinct parts, combat and platforming. Platforming's pretty easy to discuss as it's not too different from other games. You run and jump and swing to get to where you need to go. Overall, platforming's done very well. Worldless's world is non-linear and designed to take advantage of all the cool platforming abilities to create plenty of fun and challenging platforming sections. This brings us to the second unique element, character swapping. You have two distinct characters to swap between, and each has their own movesets during platforming and combat. Now, combat is where Worldless really goes off the reserve in a good way. Combat's a turn-based affair, but it's also highly active. During enemy attacks, you can defend yourself by blocking, parrying, or dodging out of the way, mitigating all incoming damage if your timing is right. Think of it like Punch-Out or Expedition 33. And when it's your turn to attack, You have a time limit, and that limit can be increased based on a few factors. Diversity of attacks, hitting enemy weaknesses, things like that. It's tough to describe succinctly, but attacking is really involved and a whole lot of fun. I've never really played a game with combat quite like Worldless's. The Project Cross Zone series and Super Robot Taisen OG Saga Endless Frontier come close, but those games are all about juggling your enemy. Worldless has so many mechanics at play that you really can't button mash to victory, especially because finishing off your opponents requires you to do a careful minigame to absorb them. My only criticism for Worldless is that its narrative is too cryptic and abstract for my tastes. I think I know what's going on in this game, but I had to look things up afterward to understand what was really going on. Generally, it's not too tough to pick up on, but to understand one of the game's well-hidden optional bosses, I had to go down a theoretical rabbit hole. It was very sciencey and cool, but I hardly remember it now. Elderand. You play as a mercenary selling his sword for another job, but when the ship gets destroyed, you get stranded on a mysterious island full of cultists, demons, and a prophecy that foretells you might have a bigger role in all this than you thought. Elderand is a game where you play as a mercenary / barbarian, and the things you fight are very Conan the Barbarian coded, so you know I loved the game. I especially loved the game's movement. If you've ever played Rogue Legacy 1 or 2, then you know exactly how this game's protag moves. Aerial movement is crisp and just as fast as moving on the ground, so you're able to jump in to attack and retreat in a single movement. And the game's about 4 to 5 hours with a pretty steady pace, so I think it's tough not to have fun with this one. I can't think of a single unique element Elderand brings to the MV scene. It basically runs the same script as Symphony of the Night in terms of story progression, down to needing a specific item to equip to see the real enemy floating around a boss so you can get to the path to the true ending. But that doesn't mean the game isn't a blast. It has a fun leveling system where you level by killing things, and each level gives you a skill point to allocate in the stats. It's nothing new, but still fun, especially for such a short game. I honestly don't have any criticism for Elderand. The game's so short yet so dense, it's tough not to enjoy every aspect of it. It's the MV equivalent of taking a strong shot of whiskey. Quick, yet impactful. That's not to say I can't predict what others may criticize. The leveling system really isn't that impactful. Combat is uneven and a little goofy, which I agree with, but file under not an issue because it's so fun. I'd say people probably criticize the game for its lack of innovation, the way it blatantly rips off Symphony, and how short it is. All valid points, but just not issues for me. Gal Guardians, Servants of the Dark. Demonic twin sister maids return from vacation to find their master in his mansion in complete shambles thanks to an adversarial lord. Now it's up to the girls to find their master's bones so he can bring justice to this fiend. Servants of the Dark is a follow-up to Gal Guardians Demon Purge, which was a spin-off of Gal Gun, a game about shooting high school girls trying to have sex with you or something. I've never played it, and I'm kinda happy that the Gal Guardian series isn't about that. Anyway, unlike Demon Purge, Servants of the Dark is a full-fledged Metroidvania. When it comes to uniqueness, I'm gonna give it to the game's leveling system. Leveling is important because it's how you unlock your traversal abilities, and leveling is kinda cool. To level up, you have to find your master's bones that have been scattered across the world. They can be in chests or can be dropped by enemies, adding a bit of randomness to the mix. Then, you take all these bones to your master's throne and level up. I have a major criticism for Servants of the Dark, but I played it at launch, so it might have been patched since then, just FYI. My major criticism is the game's fast travel to its hub, where you level up. To unlock fast travel to the hub, you have to find a specific soul while exploring its world. I know of players who missed this soul and were forced to trek all the way back to the castle every time they wanted to level up. And leveling is necessary because it's how you get the traversal abilities you need to overcome utility gates. Making this waypoint to such an integral location missable was a baffling choice. Last Vanguard. You are the last Vanguard, the last remaining soldier of an elite group tasked with fighting the absolute leader and his army. Awakened from cryogenic slumber, you must win a tournament in order to get close to the tyrant so you can take him out once and for all. The last Vanguard has a unique exploratory structure in that it is very non-linear. You can pretty much go anywhere you want, whenever you want, and take out its, I think, 3 dungeons as you see fit. It's a nice structure that was pulled off well, though I have my criticisms. Last Vanguard's uniqueness comes in its non-linear framework and how it complements the game's narrative and tournament conceit. Basically, you must win a tournament so you can have a face-to-face meeting with the game's antagonist, the absolute leader, so you can take him out. Very much like the plot in Death Race 2000, but without the delicious hand grenade visual pun. While exploring, you can find the other tournament contestants and defeat them, which in turn makes them weaker during the tournament, helping you survive the game's penultimate boss rush challenge. My biggest criticism for Last Vanguard is how it doesn't use utility gating very effectively. The game's very open from the start, and any utility gating is either done in the game's legacy dungeons or for optional sections that reward you with gear and whatnot. It's not bad, it just makes the abilities you get seem kinda pointless. You do in fact need them to enter the game's last biome, which I actually found to be detrimental. Someone correct me in the comments if things have changed, but the game starts with you fighting in the tournament with the odds stacked against you. But how cool would it be if you could actually get good enough to take down the tournament in the beginning and go straight to the final boss? But you can't because you need all 3 unlockable abilities from the legacy dungeons to enter that final biome. It's an odd setup that had a lot of potential, especially for speedrunners. Oblitus Mortis. You are an amnesiac skeleton brought back to life by a twisted sorcerer who tasks you with gathering him the heads of monsters and gods. How did you end up dead and in this situation? Perhaps that's the real mystery you need to unravel. Oblitus Mortis surprised me with how good it is. It's a very simplistic game, so don't go in thinking combat is super robust and platforming is intricate or anything like that. Where the game shines is in its non-linear exploration. The game's also NES hard and a bit stiff with its opening. Needing currency just to save is kind of a bummer, but once you get into the game, it's not an issue. Oblitus Mortis' unique elements come in its use of Venezuelan mythology and its complete disregard for players sequence breaking the crap out of this game. You can unlock every ability in this game at the store if you have the cash, making the game a speedrunner's dream. My criticism is the game's opening. I can see so many players bouncing within the first 2 hours and getting their money back because they are not going to like how difficult the game's opening is. But I promise you, if you stick with it, the difficulty evens out fairly quickly. And you'll be glad you stuck it out because Oblitus Mortis is a fantastic game. Frontier Hunter, Erza's Wheel of Fortune. Erza, a young hunter, ventures into uncharted lands filled with monsters and mysteries. When her ship and crew get stranded, she answers the call to adventure so she can find a way back home. Frontier Hunter is an Igavania with a Gooner twist and is actually really good. It's very linear with a 20-hour runtime, but with 3 characters to build, each with their own movesets, it's tough to get bored. Frontier Hunter's uniqueness comes in its character swapping mechanic. You get 3 characters to swap with on the fly, each with their own health pools, movesets, and equipment. Another unique thing Frontier Hunter does is the monster core system. Monsters drop cores when they die, and you can place these cores onto your equipment to get perks. My criticism for the monster core system is that you get tired of rearranging cores with each new piece of equipment you find. Cores are arranged on equipment like you're playing Tetris, and equipping cores onto new equipment is very tedious. INAYAH, Life After Gods. Play as INAYAH, an orphaned outcast searching for her lost tribe in a world where brutal clans rule over the ruins of a once high-tech civilization left behind by gods. INAYAH is a pretty ambitious game full of dialogue trees, choices, and consequences for those choices that ultimately lead to different endings. The game's designed to facilitate multiple playthroughs and is a fairly non-linear experience with lots of combat and platforming challenges. For uniqueness, INAYAH has a weapon swapping gimmick not unlike Blasphemous 2, with each weapon also having platforming utility. The dialogue tree with actual consequences is a pretty good differentiator as well. Now, I'm not certain my criticisms still stand for INAYAH, as there have been patches since I played it at launch, so take what I'm saying here with a grain of salt. My major criticism for the game was the need to swap weapons during sections in order to use each weapon's utility. Some of these sections could get complicated, so the need to swap weapons mid-jump several times could get confusing and overcomplicate things. I'm fairly sure this was replaced with a less complicated system. I think currently you no longer need to swap weapons to use each weapon's utility, which I think is a good move. My other criticism was the voice acting. It just wasn't up to par, and this got especially annoying since INAYAH talks to herself a lot. Voice acting isn't that big a deal to me, but if you're going to use voice work in your game, make sure it's good. Skelethrone, the Chronicles of Ericona. You are Derek Ericona. Well, you were until you got betrayed. Now, you're a skeleton traveling a dangerous world to understand why you've been brought back and your true purpose. Skelethrone is a pretty darn good Soulsvania developed by one person, which is highly impressive. The game has that addicting Souls-like leveling system with stat scaling weapons and the whole shebang. And the environments are creative and awe-inspiring. A surprising game indeed. Skelethrone isn't doing a whole lot unique in the MV space. If you're gonna play it, it's for its Souls-like nature and incredible environments. My biggest criticisms has got to be its story and difficulty. The story is a bit convoluted and hard to follow, though the DLC did clear some things up, but not everything. And there's a point in the game where bosses get so freaking difficult. Maybe that's been tweaked since launch though. Mandragora, Whispers of the Witch Tree. As an Inquisitor sworn to the King Priest, your devotion falters in a single act of defiance, thrusting you into the unraveling fate of a kingdom besieged by dark forces. From the majesty of Crimson City to the horrors of entropy, your journey through heresy, monsters, and fractured reality will decide what you ultimately become. Mandragora is a beautiful Soulsvania with amazing production value. Of all the Soulsvanias out there, Mandragora is probably the Soulsvania with the most robust features with its incredible amount of skill trees. When it comes to uniqueness, I'm going to refer you back to its high quality and customization through its many skill trees. For its criticisms, I'd say it not having a New Game Plus at launch, but that's been fixed, so I guess I'm going to say its lack of Metroidvania-ness. There's not a lot of utility gating in the game, nor is there a lot of traversal skills to unlock. It's not that big of a deal, especially if you're here for a Souls-like experience. Just know its MV-ness is a little lacking. Vigil, the Longest Night. Embark on a journey through the longest night with Layla, a valiant member of the Vigilant Order. Delve into the hidden truths shrouded in eternal darkness, unravel the mysteries surrounding Layla's enigmatic sister, and confront the eldritch horrors lurking in a world that has lost the light of day. Yet another Soulsvania, but this time it has that generic vanillaware aesthetic, which I love. I love this game, and I think it has something to do with the fact that you level up every 2 seconds, especially in the beginning. And any gear you get is also cosmetic, bringing Fashion Souls to the mix. I really can't think of anything unique Vigil brings to the MV scene. It really just stuck out for being a Soulsvania when Soulsvanias were still kinda new. I still love the game though. I have a couple criticisms for Vigil. One is its story. I love the endings and the creativity, but the finer details are a bit murky and the delivery is a bit wonky. And my other criticism is how easily you can lock yourself out of the true ending. There's a point of no return about a quarter to a third of the way into the game, and if you don't do a specific quest to collect a specific thing before this point of no return, you get locked out of the best ending, which sucks. Guns of Fury. In a near future gripped by an energy crisis, Dr. Klaus unveils the miraculous Tetracell, only to vanish after his lab is destroyed. As Special Operative Vincent Fury, you must infiltrate Easton Industries' secret facility, rescue Klaus, and recover the Tetracell before humanity's last hope becomes its greatest threat. What if Metroidvania, but also Metal Slug? That's the premise of Guns of Fury, and it is glorious. And it is hard. Not in the run and gun aspect, but in exploration. I have never played an MV that's this hard to 100%. I don't think that's a bad thing, just getting it out there. For uniqueness, the Metal Slug cross MV aspect should be good enough. Everything explodes in this game, and there are even vehicles and mechs you can unlock in certain sections, so it's freaking cool. Guns of Fury is another one of those games where my real criticisms have been addressed in post-launch patches. Prior to the patches, I hated the in-game map because biomes weren't color-coded, making it really tough to find reference points during exploration. I also wasn't a big fan of the fast travel, but I've heard you can unlock fast travel between save points during the end game, and that's cool. So I guess I can say I have no notes. Crypt Custodian. Pluto, a recently deceased cat, is sentenced to the unfortunate task of cleaning the afterlife for all eternity. Will he resign to his fate, or can he find a way out of his predicament? Another Kyle Thompson masterpiece. Crypt Custodian is an overhead MV with a cute aesthetic and story that's both silly and emotional. As far as uniqueness goes, there aren't a lot of overhead MVs out there, and since this is a Kyle Thompson game, it has that Kyle Thompson look and charm. When it comes to criticism, I've no notes. I loved everything about this game. I've heard people say Crypt Custodian is Kyle's weakest work, which I don't find to be real or worthy criticism. I've also heard people say they don't like the overhead perspective, which I don't agree with. I prefer side-scrolling for my MVs, but I can also appreciate more unorthodox perspectives. Turbo Kid. The Kid returns in this sequel to the cult classic movie of the same name. In Turbo Kid, you fall into Middle Waste, a town gradually getting taken over by a mysterious cult, and it's the Kid's mission to save everyone and find a way out. Turbo Kid is the sequel to the movie of the same name, so if you're interested in watching the movie, this game will spoil the movie because it picks up immediately where the movie left off. But if you're not interested in the movie, you don't have to worry because Turbo Kid is a standalone title. It just has flashbacks that spoil the first movie. When it comes to uniqueness, Turbo Kid's bike is so sweet. It's a bike that can teleport to your side and get spiky wheels so you can climb stuff. And the fact that it's a sequel to a movie is pretty cool too. And I mean that. This game's canon and was made in collaboration with the movie's directors, composer, and storyboard artist. I hate to say this, but I really don't have any criticism for Turbo Kid. I'm not saying it's perfect, I just think it does a really good job. I especially love the game's writing. I guess my only issue is that the Kickstarter promised an interesting western biome that ended up being a lame arena battle section, but that's it. Bow, Path of the Teal Lotus. Guided by divine purpose, the celestial Tentaihana Bow journeys through a mythic world inspired by Japanese folklore in order to prevent a calamity and restore balance to the world. Bow is a very impressive game from an artistic viewpoint. The game is gorgeous, and the Tentaihana creatures created for this game fit so perfectly in the Japanese folklore that I thought they were real. For uniqueness, I'm going to go with Bow's double jump. It's very similar to the Messenger's Cloud Step, which is hypocritical considering this is a unique element section, but it works so much better than the Cloud Step, mainly because it works in tandem with Bow's T mechanic. The longer you stay in the air in combo, the higher your T meter gets, which in turn makes your special moves with the dolls stronger. It's a cool system. My criticism with Bow is the game's final boss. He has like 6 phases, which just takes forever, and I don't feel he was properly set up. The giant skeleton is who you see mostly throughout the game, and you take him out before you enter the final biome, so it just made the pacing feel a bit off. And the ending was a bit abrupt. And there were a few locations that felt like they weren't utilized to their fullest, but the Tanuki Kabuki DLC just landed, so maybe that might assuage some of my criticisms. Constance. A young artist armed with a magical paintbrush confronts inner demons in a decaying mental landscape to save herself. Constance is such a beautiful little game. Its hand-drawn environments and sprites are downright gorgeous, and the little minigames you play to simulate the main character's life that led up to her burnout is clever and relatable. The game's movement and combat is pretty slick as well. When it comes to uniqueness, Constance's presentation is its main draw. Constance also gets a move called Paint Stroke that plays double duty as an attack that dashes through enemies and a platforming maneuver where she dashes through specific environmental objects. It's a blast to use. The puppet's curse is also unique. Upon dying, you can choose to go back to your last save point or persevere. If you persevere, you'll start from the room where you died, saving you a bunch of time, but enemies will also get a buff that stops you from dashing through them without taking damage. It's a thematic mechanic that has its pros and cons, and I like that. My biggest criticism for Constance is its length. I took the game out in 6 hours, which is pretty scant. Granted, I missed nearly a third of the game on my first playthrough, but then that raises the question, was that third even necessary? I was able to finish the game without playing a third of the game after all. Something to think about. Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. Miriam, cursed by demonic alchemy, enters a castle filled with horrors to stop its summoner and save her friend. After a highly successful Kickstarter, the Tealvania has officially returned. IGA's latest game brings back the Gothic castle exploration in a big way, with tons of weapons to collect, skills to unlock, and a large and sometimes goofy assortment of enemies to dust. Bloodstained doesn't really do much in terms of being unique. It's more of a tour de force showcasing that Tealvanias are still viable in today's market, and I'm so happy for its success because having the godfather of the Metroidvania back in action is more than I could ever have wished for. But not only did IGA bring back the gothic search action castle crawler, he brought back the tactical soul system, now rebranded as the shard system. Enemies randomly drop shards that can boost stats or give Miriam skills and abilities. It's a great system you'll love to see return. I have a few criticisms for Bloodstained. I love the game, but I think it looks so ugly, especially for a 2.5D game. And so many of its environments are too dark. The game also has way too many systems in it that make the experience feel bloated, but I'd have to say the main offender is the shard leveling system. It's way too grindy to be effective or fun. I skip this aspect every time I play the game and get by just fine. I've even played the game without engaging with creating things via alchemy and without increasing my stats via cooking. Although these mechanics are much more helpful and far less intrusive, the fact that you can complete the game without engaging with many of its mechanics just doesn't sit right with me. Why even include them if they're superfluous? I suppose one could argue that these mechanics are necessary or at least more useful in the higher difficulty options, which I guess is fair, but still doesn't sit right with me personally. Moving on, I'm also not a fan of the game's bosses. This might just be a me thing, but IGA has created some of the most iconic boss fights in one of the most iconic video game franchises. But in Bloodstained, the bosses are so generic that half of them look like legendary Pokemon or a monster of the week the Power Rangers would fight. And lastly, the envy bottlenecks where you cannot move forward at all unless you discover very specific things. There are 3 in this game, and they suck. One is the swim ability that you most likely will accidentally get. Another is the Spike Buster armor. That's not what it's called, but that's essentially what it is. And the last and certainly most egregious bottleneck is getting the pass to board the train. It's a 3-point quest where the third point in the library is neither communicated or hinted at in any way and is legit bad quest design that a professional like IGA and his team should have considered. Very frustrating. GRIME. A strange being awakens in a surreal world of living stone and grotesque creatures. Devouring enemies to grow stronger, it uncovers the unsettling truths of existence and transformation. GRIME is a beautifully ugly and abstract experience whose story plays out like a fairy tale. It is such a fun, challenging, and unique game. Definitely a Soulsvania every Souls-like fan should give a shot. GRIME's uniqueness goes beyond just its aesthetics, narrative, and storytelling, all of which are top-notch. My favorite part about GRIME is its hunt system. There are tough enemies in the game called Prey. Defeating them through absorption, this game's form of parry, unlocks that enemy's trait and provides you with hunt points. Points needed to unlock enemy traits in the form of perks. It's a neat system that rewards exploration, skilled combat, and skilled parry usage. My criticism for GRIME is more of a personal thing. I just think the game is too hard at times. The game leans hard into its parry system, and I just suck at it. The end game is kind of abrupt. There's this biome that has interesting platforming sections, but it's essentially just an exposition dump. And then the following section lets you finally use the double jump, but it's like a 5-minute sequence that ends with the boss of the game, so you don't really get to use it. Undivine. Known only as the Traveler, you arrive at a desolate village haunted by a vast abyss that has swallowed its people. Descending into the chasm, you unlock an interconnected world of relics, demons, and ancient secrets where every choice shapes the path to confronting the one behind it all. Undivine is a fantastic little Metroidvania with a lot of cool ideas developed by one person. Its simple presentation hides a deeper experience, its nonlinear nature will have you running all over the place, its secrets are galore, and your character's movement feels great. This is definitely a hidden gem. Undivine doesn't do a whole lot different from other MVs, but it does what other MVs have done and does it very well. There is a secret ARG attached to the game that can help you find its true ending's path, and I think that's pretty dang unique. My biggest criticism is that the story may be a little too vague or hidden a little too well, but other than that, I can't think of much this game didn't get right. Some players may not appreciate its minimal guidance, but that was cool with me. Guacamelee. Juan Aguacate gains mystical luchador powers after death, returning to the land of the living to rescue his beloved and his village from the evil Carlos Calaca. Guacamelee has you playing as a luchador. That alone makes it one of the greatest games to ever exist. But seriously, it's a fantastic game. The combat's fantastic, and the game's platforming is pretty dang fantastic too. Guacamelee also comes with a great sense of humor that parodies and ribs on video games and internet culture alike. Guacamelee's unique elements come in many forms. Of course, its unique brand of humor is outstanding, but its combat and platforming is where it's at. Combat has you chucking and suplexing skeletons, and its platforming emphasis predates Ori by a couple of years, but it's how these two elements integrate the game's dimension shifting mechanics that make it truly special. Shifting not only changes the environments, but it also affects how you handle certain enemies and how you traverse certain platforming sections. Guacamelee is truly one of the best MVs out there for anyone looking for fast-paced and intense action. Also, the game's got co-op. I personally have no notes for Guacamelee, but I know many critics couldn't stand its overusage of memes in the background. I've heard others complain about how the game can be completed in under 8 hours, which is an excellent length for a Metroidvania in my humble opinion. I also heard critics complain that the combat gets repetitive and doesn't really evolve in a significant way throughout the course of the game, which I suppose sounds fair, but I just had so much fun kicking skeletons into each other and fire uppercutting giant skeletons that it really didn't bother me. Guacamelee 2. Retired luchador Juan Aguacate is pulled back into action when the Mexiverse faces collapse. If you liked Guacamelee 1, you're going to love Guacamelee 2. It's pretty much the same game, just bigger and better and a whole lot tougher, especially in the platforming department. Dimension shifting is a bit more complex, making for more engaging exploration, and there's even a true ending this time around. A worthy upgrade of a sequel indeed. As for unique elements, Guac 2 is just Guac 1 with a shinier coat of paint and a few added abilities. The big overhaul is the chicken ability. In the first game, transforming into a chicken was mainly used to squeeze into tight spaces. In Guac 2, the chicken has a complete arsenal of attacks and abilities, making the form a viable option for combat and platforming. And now, there's 4-player co-op. See? Bigger and better. Again, I don't have any significant criticism for this game, but I understand it's not perfect. Again, people didn't love the game's humor with all its memes and chicken jokes, though the memes and internet culture had been drastically reduced. Some people found the game not different enough from the first game, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that wasn't an issue for me. Some critics found the game way too hard, especially in its platforming, and I can definitely see that. There are many platforming sections that'll make you sweat, but they didn't bother me too much. I found the challenge refreshing. Aggelos. When monsters invade the kingdom of Lumen, a young warrior rises to defend his homeland. Aggelos is a love letter to the Monster/Wonder Boy series and does a great job stirring the nostalgia within an old MV head like me. The world is fun to explore, the entire thing feels old school, and combat is surprisingly fun. Add in the fact that the game has a lot of secrets, mysteries, and gear, including legendary gear, which is one of my favorite tropes ever, and it's hard not to love this game. Aggelos isn't really known for innovation and uniqueness. It really is a game that wants you to remember the good old Monster/Wonder Boy days, to which it does a fantastic job, while also increasing the stakes, scope, and adding contemporary flair when it comes to backtracking and intrigue. When it comes to criticism, I think it's fair to say that it may have dipped a little too much into the monster/Wonder Boy well without adding much else to the formula. And yes, the game might be a little generic, but that's part of the game's retro charm. My one critique is that the game doesn't have a legit map. You have a map of the overworld, which is great for world building, but it's basically useless for navigation. SteamWorld Dig 2. Dorothy travels to a trading town in search of her friend Rusty. When this town is struck by mysterious earthquakes, it's up to her and her unlikely companion to uncover what trembling terrors lie beneath. Man, is SteamWorld Dig 2 such an improvement over the original, though that game was also pretty good. Dig 2 does everything 1 does, just bigger and better in mechanics, narrative, and presentation. What makes Dig 2 so great is its unique game loop. You dig, find gems, resurface, sell gems, buy better gear to make digging easier, then repeat until you beat the game. That alone would be enough to make this game fantastic, but interspersed between all the digging, looting, and upgrading is a legit Metroidvania with an interesting story and a fun world worth exploring. I hate that this keeps happening, but I just don't have any criticism for this game. I looked up what others have said, and it basically boiled down to the game was too short, which I don't agree with because it's between 8 and 12 hours long, and that they wanted post-game content after 100% completion. So, what I'm hearing is that you just wanted to play more of this incredible game, to which I will concede. Having more SteamWorld Dig 2 is a great idea. Axiom Verge 2. Billionaire CEO Indra Shodhari journeys to Antarctica to find her missing daughter, but is pulled into an alternate Earth-like world, infected by parasitic machines. As she explores the ruins of a high-tech civilization and ventures into the breach, she must hack, battle, and uncover the truth behind the mysterious figure guiding her from the shadows. Axiom Verge 2 is a huge departure from the original, and this has disappointed a lot of people. I am not one of those people. I think Axiom Verge 2 is the superior game and cannot wait for a third installment if that's in the cards. While the first game was more combat focused, Axiom Verge 2 is more exploration focused. So much so that you don't even have to fight any bosses in the game aside from the final boss. 90% or more of all combat is completely avoidable if you want to play that way, and I actually thought that was clever. When it comes to uniqueness, AV2's biggest differentiator is its hacking gimmick. Similar to the first game's Axiom Disruptor that glitched out enemies and environments, Indra's hacking pretty much does the same thing, though you have more options and control over what you can do with enemies and objects. The game also has 2 separate maps for you to explore, and the way these maps interact and intersect with each other makes exploration intriguing and unpredictable, which I really appreciate. When it comes to criticism, I cannot for the life of me find anything worth criticizing. I know that sounds like I think the game's perfect, but I swear that's not the case. I just think the game nailed what it went out to do. I guess I could say the breach kinda hurt my eyes, but other than that, I loved this game. Other critics have complained that combat was shallow when compared to the first game, but the US Army is shallow when compared to the first Axiom Verge and all its frickin' guns. Critics also said the boss fights were underwhelming, but when they're designed not to be fought, I don't really consider that an issue. As for the other criticisms, they basically boil down to, it's not like Axiom Verge 1, so I don't like it, citing how bland AV2's environments were compared to AV1's alien world, and that they missed how AV1 captured the spirit of Super Metroid and lament how AV2 didn't. So, if you really liked AV1 and was looking for more of that, AV2 will unfortunately be a letdown for you. But for me, I thought it was a fantastic continuation of the story and its concepts, and I thought AV2's gameplay was much better. And I know I'm in the minority. AWAKEN Astral Blade. Tanya, a bionic soldier, is assigned to search and rescue a missing investigation team in an island's rainforest where mysterious energy turns local animals and plants into aggressive mutants. It's gonna be up to Tanya to figure out what happened to the team and what's really behind this mysterious energy and mutations. Astral Blade does a lot of stuff that I like. Good combat with multiple weapons, cool visuals, time travel, ancient alien tech that's affecting humanity. It also has that dollar store vanillaware look I like, and it's pretty non-linear once the world opens up, with lots of side quests that affect the game's final, true ending. As for unique elements, the game has this interesting combat mechanic where you press a button right as you kill an enemy to increase the amount of money you get. It's a little thing, but it made combat very engaging and rewarding. The game also does a bullet time effect when you parry perfectly, and it's always fun to beat the crap out of an enemy while they're stuck in slow motion. When it comes to criticism, I think the narrative is kind of a mess. It's confusing and not really fleshed out enough in certain areas. The game has some unexpected difficulty spikes as well. Something else to consider is how long it takes for the game to actually open up as a Metroidvania. The game's so linear at first, I thought it was level-based for the first 2 biomes. But once you get to the hub town, which can take 2 to 3 hours if I recall correctly, the game opens up considerably. The Last Faith. In a city consumed by heresy and decay, a warrior named Eric awakens with forbidden powers. His descent through gothic ruins and divine trials uncovers ancient gods, cursed bloodlines, and the fragile hope of redemption. I freaking love this game. I get how people have written it off as a blasphemous clone or a 2D Bloodborne, but I promise you, ignoring The Last Faith is a bad idea. This game's just so much fun, especially if you like Blasphemous and Bloodborne, and Soulsvanias in general. It has leveling, builds, stat-scaling weapons, just everything addicting about Souls-likes, including its methodical and satisfying combat. The only unique element I can think that The Last Faith has beyond other Soulsvanias is the monster form you unlock. At launch, this monster form was broken and made every boss encounter trivial, but I think the game's been balanced since then. When it comes to criticism, most of my critiques have been addressed. At launch, you could choose a class to start with, but they were all the same. Nowadays, each class is unique. One critique I had that I don't know was addressed is the lack of weapons. When I played at launch, I think there were only 3 great swords, which is a travesty. As for others' criticisms, it mainly comes down to the lack of originality, being that the game's essentially Blasphemous meets Bloodborne, and that the game doesn't innovate. It's very much a Souls-like that ticks off all the Souls-like boxes without adding anything new. Those things don't bother me, but I was a bit irked by the game's story. I didn't really understand everything that was going on, so when those 2 ladies were waiting on me in the climax, I was just confused. I wasn't really sure why they were there and what I was doing by taking down those monsters and grabbing those heart things. I have an idea what's going on, but I'm just not certain. Regardless, I still had a blast.